Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships.
Now then, you are very welcome back. So we're going to talk GAA here on Off the Ball this evening. To briefly sum up the weekend that was in the football, we've Eddie Brennan on later on to talk hurling, but in the football, Kerry and Mayo in the Division 1 final, Dublin and Kildare drop into Division 2 next year. Roscommon and Galway top Division 2, Offaly and Down relegated, Cork stay up by the skin of their teeth. The Limerick footballers are into Division 2 and Louth under Mickey Hart will go with them. Big achievements there. Laois and Wicklow drop into Division 4. Cavan and Tipperary come back into Division 3. Very happy to say Billy Joe Padden is with us on the line. Hey, Billy Joe.
Good evening, Joe.
So we might just start then on really the story of the league, which is Dublin relegated into Division 2. We've talked a lot about them initially in that 4-match losing streak, and then they steady the ship, and then they lose to Monaghan and are relegated. We'll come to Monaghan in a moment, obviously, because they merit some conversation. But what are we saying of Dublin then at the end of this league campaign?
Well, we're saying they're not the same Dublin. I think that we've all recognised that over the course of the full league campaign, that they do not have the same strength and depth. Their players are not playing at the same level. When the 15 they lined out in Monaghan and what the last couple of games has been a strong team, and you thought that maybe in normal circumstances it would be good enough to win those games, such as the quality of player, but it's been well commented that they don't have the strength and depth that they would have had a couple of years ago. And I think what was really noticeable in the game at the weekend and in the game in particular in Newbridge against Kildare, where they had loads of possession, loads of the ball late on in the game when they seemed to have a head of steam, they didn't have that composure that was the hallmark of that great Dublin team in many ways, and how well they were able to finish out the latter stages of games in high pressure situations. They were really, really good at that over the last 10 years, and it just in many ways they'd got themselves right into a good position to save their skin basically, and weren't able to do it, which is so it's a new thing for us to see this Dublin team be affected like that.
That's the thing, because you could say of the Monaghan game, well, they had some bad wides in the last 5 minutes of the game, and they had some wides before half time where they could have gone in ahead, instead they went in behind. They butchered some goal opportunities, so really, on balance it wasn't so bad. They could have won the game. The thing is though, the butchering of those chances, the many wides, they are now trends across several games, so they are here to stay at the moment anyway.
They are, and that's about your mindset, your approach. Maybe it can be in the way you're training as well, not so much in what you're doing at training, but in terms of the standards you set in training, the concentration levels in training. And if you hear any of the Dublin players, even some of the ones that have retired since, it's about those standards that they were able to set in training, what they were demanding off each other. Also the guidance as well in terms of your shot selection. Dublin were so disciplined over the years and not taking wild shots from bad places on the field or under severe pressure. We've seen a change in that. But I think that many of the things that had cost them in those two games that I just referenced really can just come down to poor execution, and I think that is linked to sheer mental preparation for those games, because I know, and we've seen it before, that those players are good enough in normal situations to take those chances, to take those goal chances when they arise, or the simple point, or find the next pass to a teammate in a better position to make it an even easier score, something that Dublin was really, really good at.
Yeah, they're no longer missing a whole bunch of players either. Conor Callahan to come back, Paddy Small to come back, but really other than that, they're kind of set. This is what they'll have, and they've improved in certain respects, we should certainly say. Brian Howard out of that half back line into the half forward line looks better. James McCarthy came into the half back line. Where for you could they do with bolstering in terms of personnel?
It's difficult to say, because you rightly point out that some of those players you mentioned, like I think Conor Callahan and Paddy Small coming back into the mix will be enough for them from an attacking sense, because they still have Rock and Cormac Costello, really good players. I think what they really need is a bit more power in the half back line, a bit more legs in defence to try and push them up the field, and that'll be difficult. James McCarthy did that job for them for so long and was so dynamic and strong. Can he keep doing it? He might be more comfortable in midfield where he can read the game a bit easier. I think it's about finding that balance in their half back line and driving them forward. And I think the onus will come on a player maybe like Owen Merchant, because we've seen him in Croke Park, really use that pace that he has to get forward. And he may have to have a bigger role on the team. And I think that's an area that they need to focus on.
You know, over the last number of years, Dublin's excellence probably camouflaged the situation in Leinster a touch, because Dublin were so good that really nobody was going to beat them anyway in Leinster. But now that they've come back to the pack, for the first time in a long time, we're realistically saying to each other, well, actually, who might topple Dublin in Leinster? And this weekend, as Richie pointed out in the news round, there's no Leinster team in Division 1 next year in the football. What's your read there? Like, it seems Meath have come backwards. They had off the pitch, a rocky winter for Andy McEntee. Who knows to what extent that's upset things. Obviously Mickey Hart's doing a job at Louth. Kildare pushing on a touch, but no one there really that you feel is anyway close to Dublin or in a great place. Kildare were okay, to be fair, in Division 1 this year, just not so much away from home. But Leinster football generally?
Yes, well, I think the evidence is there. If you don't have a team in Division 1, if somebody was going to topple Dubs and the Dubs in Leinster, you would have to see marked improvement. And maybe Meath had put themselves in that situation maybe 2 seasons ago, but they haven't been able to push it forward. They've been too inconsistent, and just their level of performance hasn't been good enough. I think Kildare's year, their Division 1 campaign, it's hard to be overcritical of them because they've brought a bunch of players into it. They've had some really good home performances. I think in some ways they'll learn an awful lot from what happened yesterday in Carrick-on-Shannon against Mayo, and that they went to try and play a toe-to-toe open game of football against Mayo, and Mayo just absolutely loved that. And in a high-scoring game, they were able to run them off the field. And they'll learn from that you cannot always do that. You have to be a bit more patient at times, a bit more considered, a bit more defensively solid. Now, whether they can make up that ground in the short space of time over the next couple of weeks, I'm not so sure. But Kildare seem the most likely if they're able to go on and have a good season this year, and again focus on Division 2, get back into Division 1, and maybe next season if Dublin don't improve. But when you look at it, Dublin are red hot favourites to win Leinster, and it'd be a brave person to call it against them.
Yeah, it's hard to know with Meath and Andy McEntee to what extent the executive committee vote against him has destabilised things. Certainly, you know, when it was put to the county board, he had the vote to remove him at 36%, which is well short of the 60 required. But like, that's a messy October, and it does undercut a manager. We may never know until his tenure's over and players can speak a bit more freely. But they've certainly gone backwards, Meath, after looking like they were moving in the right direction.
Yes, and that sort of friction between the county board and a playing squad is never positive. Now, I know some managers may be able to use it in a situation where it's a case of us versus them, but to do that as a manager, you have to have the backing of everyone in your squad. There can be no dissenting voices in any way, and everyone has to buy into that to create that. And it just doesn't seem like that's the case with me. They're not really getting the standout performances. No players are really, putting their hand up and saying, like, I'm a Division 1 player and I need to play in that division, year in, year out. They just probably don't have the quality, particularly in an attacking sense. They've had issues with changing of goalkeepers and stuff like that. They just haven't been consistent enough, haven't been good enough. And it's difficult to see whether they can actually turn around quickly and get on that upward trajectory again.
The final score yesterday, by the way, was Monaghan 3-13, Dublin 1-18. So Jack McCarron, both the hero and the man of the match consistently across the game. He scored 2-6, 1-3 from play. McCarron has been so unlucky with cruciate injuries early in his career, but I think, Billy Joe, everybody in football knows the talent that is there, and he's had some big moments. In fact, one's just like this against Galway last year, but he's had some big moments across his career despite the injuries. And I mean, his display yesterday is class. It's classy in the absence of McManus as well.
Yes, he's a wonderful player. I think in some ways he's a lot of players now to be dominant in an attacking sense, particularly in the full forward line, have to have some crazy physical attributes. They're either big and strong like Michael Murphy, or exceptionally fast and are of great endurance that they can wear players down. He's not the best athlete out there on the field, but what he might be the most skillful player on the field on any given Sunday, and he's definitely got a cleverness that maybe is hard to find a match for. The wherewithal to realise instantly as he's turning to shape on his left foot to lob the keeper. There's no hesitation there. He's a very clear idea of what he can do with the ball. He knows where the space is. I think even one of the points he got late in the second half were, I think 3 or 4 Dublin players went in around Mohan, And he just stood there, waited for the ball to break out to him, and instantly knew to turn to his left, onto his left foot, and a shot straight away. It's that sort of cleverness. And then again, you have to add that to the ability he has off his left boot. He has a really cultured left foot and is an excellent finisher. And I think a player with him, when he's not the greatest athlete, if Monaghan can focus on getting the ball to him in the danger zone as often as they possibly can in the game, he has the ability, the skill, the cleverness to create stuff, to get scores himself. There are other days where you will see him be bottled up and it'll be a great pass that'll set somebody else through. He has that vision as well. He's a wonderful footballer and a player that I love to watch.
Yeah, really classy. And like I said, just like last year, kicks the point to keep Monaghan in Division 1. I mean, Monaghan and cockroaches, really. So Division 3, they win in 2013, Division 2 in 14, and now they've been in Division 1 since 2015 and counting. Only Kerry there longer, which is an extraordinary testament to that group. So well done to them, and we'll see what they can produce in the Ulster Championship. Donegal Armagh caught the eye in Letterkenny. It finished 114 to 113. Donegal 1 point winners. A theme with this league is you wonder how many managers want to be in finals, because Rian O'Neill, Rory Grugan summoned from the bench but didn't start. I think 4 usual starters for Armagh just held back. So you just wonder what managers want. But I guess what I wanted to ask you about is Paddy McBrearty kicks the winning point in the 75th minute, and then you just see these scenes afterwards, which occasionally you see in other sports, but like consistently you just still see them in Gaelic football. It's like just in the DNA, it's in the culture, and I don't even want to say, oh, it's a disgrace or it's outrageous. It's embarrassing. Like, it's embarrassing for the sport that this is the carry-on.
I agree, Joe. I think it's kind of laughable at times. Maybe I shouldn't use that word, and that somebody may get hurt in one of these incidents at some stage. I'm hopeful that obviously no one was hurt yesterday. I think it's so unnecessary. I think that players and management teams are so worried about taking a backward step and being deemed to be weak or timid in some way, and that they have to stand up to this sort of stuff. And I think until the GAA actually figure out a proper disciplinary system and a proper way to, I suppose, maybe I don't know, whatever discipline measures they put in for these sort of incidents, because they are totally unnecessary and something that we need to take out of the game. If nothing else, that happened at the end of the game, and that's all well and good. You just want everyone to go get home and get off, and for them to look forward to their championship game. But when it happens in the middle of the game, you can lose 5 or 6 minutes of a game through this sort of stoppage, and it can be used in some ways as a tactical thing during games to try and stop a team's momentum, and that's kind of a situation that frustrate me the most. So I think it really, again, it's something the GAA has to sort out themselves, to figure out disciplinary measures that can really be in the minds of players, that if they get caught in these situations, that you're going to lose out badly, and you're going to lose out in terms of missing out on the opportunity to play in big games.
Yeah. And I think we take your meaning in the word laughable. Like, it's amateur in the worst sense, this kind of carry on. It's just not something we see in any other sport. And I suppose they're going to play each other in 4 weeks' time now in the Ulster Championship. I'm sure lots of people in the GAA hierarchy and across the country look at it and just think, this is of a bygone era, we need to stamp this out. So what will happen, I mean, Kevin McStay made the point last night, if you were to go through that frame by frame, you can identify the offenders pretty readily. So say they get slapped with a ban, well then we look forward to appeal after appeal after appeal, and the whole thing will just drag out and be a mess. And I don't know how many acronyms there are, but the CCCC and beyond will have their hands full, and in the end they'll all be let off anyway. That's maybe it's unfair, but that is the traditional view of how these things go.
No doubt. The minute I hear it's going to be appealed, I just automatically assume they're getting off, and they'll be back to play, and whatever. I don't know. I was trying to think of it today. Well, what reason are they getting off? Is it a technicality in line with the rule book, or is it something the referee didn't do in terms of filling out his match report, and that wasn't done correctly or whatever? I have no idea. And thankfully, I have no interest.
He probably didn't read them their rights in Latin or something. Like, it's something ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
So
and like, it's just, you know, I try to think as little about it as I possibly can.
So we'll see them again in 4 weeks' time. Mentioned Cork survived by the skin of their teeth, 121 to 120 winners against Offaly, so they stave off relegation. But it doesn't seem, nothing's pointing towards Cork putting it up to Kerry and Munster this year.
Nope, you wouldn't think that they are coming anywhere close to where Kerry are. If you were to be worried as a Kerry supporter, you know, Cork would have to be making a charge through that division and making big strides in terms of their development, because, you know, we know what Kerry have in terms of the forward power they have, the Clifford and Gainey and Sean O'Shea, those players that can get big scores on games. Paddy Clifford, playmaker, very hard to contain. Cork just don't have that talent level first and foremost, but they don't even seem to be at the physical level that some of these top tier Division 1 counties are, in terms of their ability to play hard for 75, 76 minutes, the ability to bring in 4 or 5 players who are also at that conditioning level to drive it on. So there's still more work for them to do. They really need to focus on putting in as good a performance as they can against Kerry, trying to see how long they can last in the championship and getting to Division 1. I know we have this conversation in nearly every year at the start of the year about how important being in Division 1 is, but it's really important when you're a county trying to rebuild and trying to get back to where you should be, because there's no doubt Cork should be a Division 1 county. Yeah.
Kerry and Tyrone, it finished Tyrone 115, Kerry 211, so 1 point win for Tyrone. Mayo put 220 on Kildare, so they'll meet in the Division 1 final. Tyrone, a lot of their best players back, playing in their best positions, several returning to form. Bench was starting to look a bit beefier. Anthony Moyles was making that point to Ger this morning on AM. So, like, Tyrone have been just almost, we felt withering on the vine for a lot of this league campaign, and then suddenly they get their act together. So they'll be thereabouts come the summer. What about Kerry and Mayo then in a league final?
Yeah, it's well, I think from Kerry's point of view, first and foremost, it's hard. I don't want to belittle the Tyrone performance in any way, because they were very, very good, deserved winners. And when you go through the Tyrone team sheet, it's a very, very strong team, full of players that are coming back into form, as you rightly pointed out. From Kerry's point of view, with the Munster Championship being weaker than the Connacht Championship, this is a game that Jack O'Connor will have focused on. You know, he's tried to go through the league, winning every game. They've been very successful so far. I think it'll be a real important focus for them to win the game. Mayo, on the other hand, have so many injuries at the minute that it looked like for the last 3 weeks they didn't want anything to do with a league final, and they find themselves in it. But when you look at just to name players like Robbie Hindley, they don't know if he's going to be fit for the game. Paddy Durkin, Diarmuid O'Connor, all are injured again. Brendan Harrison looks like he's a serious injury, suspected ACL. So, you know, he's an all-star player in your full back line that's out of contention. Still no sign of Cillian O'Connor coming back. And then in the back of your mind is always the 24th of April, I think, against Galway, which is the big game. And in some ways, it's a kind of a funny situation where Galway are playing Roscommon in the Division 2 game beforehand, and then Mayo are afterwards. And you nearly think Galway and Mayo would be nearly more concerned about what the other team is doing more so than their own game.
Yeah. Well, it plays out this weekend, and then we're into, as you said, Galway Mayo on April 24th. So that is the league done. How would you briefly sum it up, the league 2022?
I think you've seen a marked improvement in the quality of play as a result of the amount of preparation teams have been able to put together. The COVID years, I think, saw a drop in standards in terms of the quality of football. I think the conditions had a huge effect on the early rounds of the leagues in terms of the scoring ability of forwards. But I think this last weekend, in good conditions, you saw some really good forward performances in McCurry and Tyrone. Brian O'Donoghue for Mayo, Jack McCarran, as we spoke about. And I think that's a positive in terms of the standard. I think it's been very entertaining as well. And in some ways, the fact that Dublin have come back to the pack means that we're looking forward to a very, very even championship. And even teams like Galway and Roscommon coming out of Division 2 are going to be very dangerous as well in the summer. So I think we have a really, really entertaining championship ahead of us.
Okay, great to have you on. Thanks, Billy Joe.
No problem, Joe.
Billy Joe Padden with us here on Off the Ball this evening, and our football coverage is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more. Eamon in Kildare makes a fair point. Nobody getting close to toppling Dublin and Leinster. Kildare beat them this year and finished ahead of Dublin in the league. Jesus, even when you beat Dublin, you don't beat Dublin. Fair point. But we're suspecting there's more improvement in Dublin, I suppose, is the point I was making to Billy Joe. But I take your point, Eamon in Kildare. Good man.